Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bound to Talk Football. We are on our Monday recap episode. Spoiler alert. I mean, technically, we are filming this on Monday. Happy Monday, Paul. Happy Labor Day. It is 12:12 a.m. right now on a Monday morning. Paul and I are recording this. I've been over at Benton County Speedway calling races all night. Paul has been up at Iowa City all weekend, so we were like, well, we want to get this out on Monday, so we're going to get this out on Monday. Dang it. So, yeah, week 2, Paul. Fun week. I mean, I don't think it was as good as week 1, but still pretty good games across the board.
Yeah, quality week. A lot of big performances. I'd say this week was more about a lot of dudes just went crazy. I wouldn't say it was like 20 games of like crazy down to the wire games, but we still got a couple of those. So
yeah, we did. Yeah, it was a fun week. We didn't get our not a prediction, but our preview video. Paul and I recorded a preview video, but we kind of had to record like spur of the moment. And I had Bound pulled up on one page and I had StreamYard pulled up on the other page. And I kept trying to go back and forth because I wanted to see what was happening on the stream. And we didn't have notes. Usually we have a whole show sheet like we do today. And Bound runs advertisements on their page, so it just constantly loads. Well, StreamYard didn't like that, and it didn't like me doing that. So definitely had some problems. The stream was very glitchy on my end. My voice was just glitchy. I was like, I didn't want to put that out there. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, we're going to jump into it. First of all, Paul, what did you do, or what games you watch on Friday? I was in Dowling. I called Dowling Valley. That was a fun game. What did you do?
I was mainly around the CISN TV games. Watched the Ankeny game. That was disappointment as a Hawk alum, but it was cool to witness. I guess Connor Moberly just torch us. But and then I watched some Dowling Valley, even though it was kind of not a sleeper because it's a rivalry, but it was not that crazy of a game. Other than that, not too much. I've been just checking scores, and there's a lot performances, guys that we were checking on that were playing good. So that's kind of all I did on Friday. How about you?
Yeah, well, I was at Dowling Valley. Yep, Dowling Valley. It was a good game. I had never gotten to call that game. It wasn't overshadowed by Walkie Walkie Northwest. We didn't get none of CISN got to do that because WHO was there, but and they do great. I mean, nothing against that. But it was almost sold out. I mean, it's an amazing game. We'll talk about it here in a little bit, but yeah, it was a pretty good game. So, and then I came back and we got straight to work on graphics and stuff. And it's so funny because I'm calling the game, and like every break I have, I'm either texting you guys in the group chat, telling you about scores. And then it's funny because my color commentator, literally my jaw dropped when he sent me the Glenwood score. And he could tell I saw something, and he's like, "Oh, you got a score update?" I'm like, "Yeah, from 4A." I was like, "I'm not happy about this." So, no, that's funny, but
it was hilarious when I said that. I was like, "What the heck?"
We'll talk about that. So, all right, let's jump right in. We're going to start with Class 5A like we always do. We'll start with 8-player one of these days, but we'll start with 5A up top. Southeast Polk defeats Ankeny 58-21. Connor Mobley goes off. 6 total touchdowns, 5 in the air. 1 on the ground, 272 yards. Ankeny, I think we saw this coming. I think there was definitely times where we were like, I mean, Ankeny's won a lot against Southeast Polk, but the Rams are just a whole nother level of just so good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on the side of like, this is not the same Ankeny teams we've seen for the past couple of years. And you're coming off an emotional win. Like, that is like crazy win to come off of and kind of lock back in for a week where you're playing the number 1 team in the state. So I'd point it a lot towards that. But I mean, that Southeast Polk just torching. It was like 58-21 was the final, but it was like not even, it was like 6 points for Ankeny.
Was it like 42-7 at one point?
I think they had 14 actually, because I remember, I'm not sure, but it was like bad.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't pretty. I mean, it flat out wasn't pretty. This Southeast Polk team is just on a whole nother level. And like you said, for Ankeny, last week was great, but I think emotionally you were really invested in that game. And like you said, how do you not have a lull after that week? So yeah, I mean that's big. They're just so much, like, we'll talk about it here in a second, but they have just separated. Like Dowling and Southeast Polk are 1-2, but then it's no one else is perfect. Everybody else has already have a blemish on their record. And you could say Dowling hasn't looked great, and we'll talk about that, but I mean they just look perfect.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just one of those things. Did you have anything else on that one?
Nope.
All right, we'll go to Iowa City Liberty defeats Iowa City High 41-14. Graham Beckman had a day. 269 yards. He only threw 6 incompletions, 26 for 32, 3 passing touchdowns, and he ran for 1 touchdown. We don't know if Drew Larson was hurt. He wasn't the leading passer in this game, so it makes me think either he was maybe benched or he was maybe hurt. But Paul, Liberty has got to be kicking themselves after that week 1 loss to Iowa City West, because clearly they are very good. And Iowa City High, they're not my overreaction, but man, not a great start for the Lowhawks.
Yeah. I mean, week 1, it's kind of a chalk. I wouldn't be so mad, but this one kind of definitely stings a bit. 41-13. I mean, if Larson is hurt, I wouldn't criticize him too much, especially if he's going to come back. It kind of just sucks RPI wise. But I mean, shout out to Liberty. They got it done. And Graham Beckham, man, just went off.
Do you think these guys could be the team out east to represent if we go to the Dome? Oh, video crashed a little bit. We'll see if Paul comes back or if his video died. We'll just have to see. Well, anyway, what it is, I definitely think that we could see what happens going forward. Okay, we're back.
Yeah, back.
Well, we'll jump in. Paul's computer crashed, so he had too many notes, and we're back going. So, Paul, question: like I said before we were cut off, is Iowa City Liberty maybe the team to represent the East?
I mean, right now, it's a toss-up. I mean, I wouldn't say no just because of how much of a toss-up it is. They can compete. I'd be worried about Prairie right now, and honestly, Cedar Falls. I think both those teams are probably the front runners, but Liberty's like in the mix. We'll talk about it soon, but Kennedy has to be still in the mix, but it's a little worrisome. I'm worried about it.
Yeah, we'll get to that as we get going. Congrats to Iowa City Liberty, big win. Waukee Northwest defeats Waukee 20-17. Sam Johnson shows up, 207 yards and 2 touchdowns. Paul, this is Waukee. What's going on with Waukee? And I say this because I called their game the first ever Waukee versus Waukee Northwest basketball game, and you remember it. Waukee was up big. Like, people were leaving the game. Northwest came back, won the game, and stunned Waukee. And everyone's like, all right, Northwest, they're still better. They are better. And the same thing happened. First ever football game between these two teams. Waukee blows a lead. Northwest, who had no business most of the game, just stuns them. And you're like, is anything? I mean, Waukee's better. Northwest is good. But, man, you're like, dude, you had it.
Yeah. I mean, sucks for Waukee. It's like the worst. It's the worst. Whoever they play next week's about to get.
Sioux City North.
They're okay. Yeah, I'm gonna put a high spread on that game. That's the worst thing that you could possibly go through as a Warrior fan if they've gone through it just multiple times. I will say this rivalry literally hasn't disappointed yet.
No,
it's been like
in nothing, in everything.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So,
did you see the crowd videos? You and I said, on the podcast that didn't happen, but I said it on my Wednesday pod. that crowd was going to be the most electric crowd we've ever seen. And by the videos, by golly, that was the best crowd I think I've ever seen at an Iowa high school football game.
Now, Sam Johnson threw a touchdown pass to like take the lead. So I think it was Will Ratz. It was the wide receiver for them.
I think
And
so.
it was like the strobe lights were going. They panned the crowd. Literally, I think it was shoulder to shoulder crowd.
Was that the one in the corner of the end zone?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was crazy.
That's so cool, man.
Would be crazy to attend.
I thought it was so funny. You may know it. You probably do. Cyclone Larry, Twitter account, parody Twitter account, tweets about Iowa State all the time. He's a pretty funny guy. Good follow on Twitter. Even if you're an Iowa fan. He tweeted on a retweet of the video of the crowd. And he said, he's like, will Iowa ever beat Texas in high school football? No. But in the last 10 years around Des Moines, the play of the prospects, the teams, and the game atmosphere has jumped significantly from what it was. And last night or Friday night was a perfect example of that. Just how cool Iowa high school football has become, especially at this high of a level.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And it sounds crazy, but it almost helps when it's these rivalries when a school gets split apart. Not saying that's a great thing. I don't think it's great, but it sure does create good rivalries. And I don't know who I was talking about. I don't know if it was you or I. The rivalry will still be good, always. But we can't not cherish these years where there are Waukee Northwest kids still in high school that went to Waukee. Because that's what made it cool, was because you went to high school with these people, and now they're on the other side, and now you're like, well, you shouldn't have done that. We're better. That's what I'll miss about these first couple of years of this rivalry.
Yeah.
So
because when you just go up always being a Waukee Northwest kid, you lose that.
Yeah. You're just like, you're grown to taught not to like Waukee. Yeah. But I'd be curious, Matt on our staff, Waukee, then went to Northwest. I'm pretty sure he'd tell you, I didn't like Waukee, So, it's cool. Congrats to Northwest. They get Roosevelt this week. Keep an eye on Roosevelt. That's not going to be an easy game. So I'm curious to see how that one shapes out. Dowling defeats Valley 14-0. Rashad Davis, 22 carries, 128 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Paul, I can tell you right now, this game wasn't boring. It was good, but three or four turnovers by Dowling. Caleb Jewell gets injured on the second drive for Valley. I have not heard anything about him, his injury update, but man, he took a hard hit. I was really worried for him. I still am. They brought in the backup. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. And then he played a little bit. Valley just didn't pass the ball. And if they did, they couldn't make a pass. And then Ethan Stemler came in late in the game. It was 7-0 the whole game. And this junior out of nowhere started throwing darts and was hitting everybody in stride. And then he just tried something too late. And Jacob Kruger picked it off, pretty much sealed the game. But I don't know what I learned. I'm still not sold on Dowling because Dante Cataldo had a great week 1. He just struggled in week 2. He had so many missed passes, just to wide open guys that Dowling probably could have won this game 28-0. He fumbled once, it's just a couple mistakes. And Valley, if they had their quarterback, I think they would have been fine because their defense is actually very good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. Dowling's 2-0, but you just look at it and you're like, man, that's a rough 2-0. Luckily, the schedule gets easier until Southeast Polk in a couple weeks, but I don't know, man. It was a weird game, and you watched it too. I mean, it was.
Yeah, I thought Dowling when I saw those first 2 tutties, I was just like, all right, they're gonna roll, and then just kind of never happened.
The first drive, like Dowling first drive, easy. Rashad Davis scored on like the 3rd play, and same thing. I'm like, well, this thing's over.
Mm-hmm. One thing I will say about Valley is I actually don't think they're going to lose a game the rest of the year.
Is it favorable?
It's favorable. There's some toss-ups, but I'd say the way they've played against the top dogs,
and
they've kind of earned it.
In most polls that I've seen, like they're not out of the top 10. I mean, they don't deserve to be out of the top 10. I mean, they're still a very talented team. And like I said, defensively, they are so, so good.
Mm-hmm.
I was really impressed with Valley, but good for Dowling. They get not a break, but I mean, it gets a little easier here for a couple weeks, and then they'll get back going. But they'll settle in. They'll settle in, no problem. Pleasant Valley defeats Cedar Rapids Kennedy 36-35. I don't know what I should be more thought about. Is Bettendorf legit, or is Cedar Rapids Kennedy not what we thought they were? Elijah Rodney runs for 100 yards on 6 carries and a touchdown. Good for Pleasant Valley, man. I mean, we'll talk about Bettendorf in a second, but that's a good win, and we're going to save your Kennedy thoughts for later, wink, wink. But just quickly, was this double OT, I think?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough start to the year for Kennedy, man.
Yeah. I'll talk about it more about, I don't know what's going on with that. Shout out to PV, though, man. That's like
for what they lost a lot. I mean, they're still very young. So that's a big win. Good for Pleasant Valley. My boys showed up. Cedar Falls 35, Johnston 21. You talked about Johnston last week in your overreaction, and I thought everything you said was valid, and I think we validated that this week. Drake Gelhaus returned, and what do you know? Cedar Falls figured it out. 21 carries, 135 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This is the Cedar Falls we expect, and I think we will see. If Gelhaus plays, stays healthy, and gets through the season, Cedar Falls will be in the dome.
Yeah. No, this is my number 1 team out of East right now, and I mean, with Gelhaus in it, it's way different, obviously. I'm sure if you're a Cedar Falls fan, student, whatever you're thinking right now, I really wish we had Gelhaus for week 1, because 2-0, they'd be, for most polls, probably top 3, top 4. Just that loss, close. People aren't really, I mean, I'm not a big hold of singular loss against the team, and especially with an excuse, but a lot of people probably dropped them there saying they're like a 7th ranked team.
And that's the thing, like, you hit it on the nose. There are only 2-0 teams left in the class that are playing each other, I should say, that are top of the top. Now, granted, there are other 2-0 teams. They're not quite there yet. We'll talk in a second. But it's a fight for who's in third right now. And I think you're right. I don't know. I almost said I'd put Cedar Falls over Prairie, but I don't know. Like, I get it. Prairie won the head-to-head, but I just think we'll figure out what Cedar Rapids Prairie is this week as they go to Southeast Polk. I get to call that game. First ever game at the new Southeast Polk Stadium. We're going to figure out how legit Prairie is quickly this week. Prairie's not in here, but they had a kid, 6 touchdowns. Is that correct?
Casey Kelly.
Yeah. So they're going to be fun to watch. Quickly wrapping up, since we're going a little long here on 5A, Urbandale defeats Iowa City West. This was baffling. I mean, I just shook my head at this one. Jalen Brooks runs for 24 carries, 210 yards, and 3 touchdowns. This Urbandale team got blanked by Indianola last week, 31-0. Iowa City West beat Iowa City Liberty. What is happening? Like, how did Urbandale do this? Like, what?
I mean, this is just frustrating because I feel like this is an Iowa City West story every year.
Yeah.
It's like a big win, and then they lose to like a team you're like expecting at least a solid win. Happened with Bettendorf last year. It's kind of just a weird story with Iowa City West, but I mean, they seem good. Wallace is good. They got talent. It's weird. The shout out to Urbandale, though. Let's get blanked and then come out and just thrash a team.
Yeah. That's a good win. Speaking of Bettendorf, the Bulldogs are 2-0. I'm not going to talk about them yet as a favorite, even though I swear Bulldog fans have the best fan base in terms of wanting you to think that they are the best, because we had people after week 1, after the win against PV, saying, oh, Bettendorf's back. So Bettendorf's 2-0. Shout out to the Bulldogs. And then how about Cedar Rapids Jefferson? Hadn't won a game since 2019. Well, guess what? They're 2-0, and they look actually pretty good. They remind me of Davenport West of last year. I like that team that could sneak in, be the 16th team, and I think they'd love it. And maybe they'll be better. I'm not sure, but cool for Cedar Rapids Jefferson to be 2-0. That's a good start to the year. Roosevelt's 2-0. So yeah, that is Class 5A. It was a fun week in 5A. Next week's survey or menu isn't as good. There's only one game of 2-0 teams, and that'll be our 5A game of the week. So, we'll see what happens. We are going to drop down to Class 4A, where we had technically 2 4A games of the week. We'll start with our 3A game of the week, but it's 4A. Glenwood blanked Atlantic 47-6. Caden Anderson, 186 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then 1 on the ground. Paul sent me the halftime score on Bound. It was 41-0, and I thought it was a typo. Like, I thought it was legitimate. No, it wasn't even halftime. It was in the second quarter. I was like, is that real? Do we need to talk about Glenwood as a possible 4A dome team?
I mean, we might need to. They just dominating. We'll see. They get some real tests coming up. I believe they play Lewis Central coming up. Not next week, but it's like in a up-and-coming week. Yeah, Glenwood's legit so far. We have to see. I mean, with these teams, it's always kind of a wait and see. But Caden Anderson is legit. And,
dude,
I mean, they thrashed Atlantic. I mean, this was easy. So it's
like, the thing is, like, Atlantic's good. Like, I'm not just going to sit here and say they're not good, because they're a good team. Now, this was a true test for them, and it gets harder as the season goes on. But, man, just an embarrassing loss. I mean, and Glenwood, power to them. It's not our 4A or /3A game of the week, but they play Harlan this week. I take Glenwood. I mean, Harlan's fine, but I think Glenwood's better. We'll stick in the Hawkeye 10. I called this on Wednesday, and we actually got a DM from somebody that was like, hey, Blake called it. Creston defeats Lewis Central 22-20. I say it's an upset, but deep down, this isn't an upset. Creston is the better team, with Brendan Hayes leading the charge. Dylan Calvin had 2 picks. And Paul, read that stat there, because that is kind of unbelievable, that stat that you have written down.
Shout out KMA Land for the stat. But Titans' first regular season defeat to someone other than Harlan since 2017, and that was.
Are you kidding me? That's 6 years.
I wasn't even in high school.
6 years. That means they either lost to Harlan or lost at the Dome in the playoffs.
I was playing 2K17.
Oh my gosh! It technically, yeah. Well, be 2K18, whatever. That is insane. And they did this on the road. Like, they went to Lewis Central and said, "All right, we'll take you." It wasn't pretty, but man, you talk about a game. I didn't think Lewis Central was as good, and I thought Brendan Hayes and the boys at Creston were just really good, and I think they are. Are they dome contenders? Maybe not. Maybe. I think they can get to the final 8. But, man, you talk about a big win. That's your signature win right there. And they've been waiting for that. I don't know, man. That's huge.
They're going to build off that momentum. That's a perfect scenario to start their season.
Yeah. Norwalk defeats Indianola 21-14. Aiden Harder, 406 yards, 3 touchdowns. Eli Robbins, 206 yards. Aiden Harder is a dog. What's with Norwalk and these beyond comprehensible passing quarterbacks? Only 21 points, though, is interesting. That's a good win over an Indy old team that just blanked Urbandale. Norwalk's defense gave up, 30-some points to Carlisle last week, so I was a little worried. Do we need to be talking about Norwalk as a possible team? Like 4A, I'll talk about it later, but 4A, man, is everywhere.
It's a dogfight for sure. I mean, their top dog, Xavier. We'll talk about it, but yeah, I mean, it's not a toss-up, but I mean, it's definitely interesting. It's not chalk.
Yeah,
I mean, Norwalk. Yeah, you're right. Norwalk, these quarterbacks, just spew these guys out.
Yeah, it's insane. And this game, dude, if you want to go watch a close football game, go watch Norwalk, Indianola. Great game every couple of years. Shout out to our photographer, Kennedy Hartson. Went out for her first time for us for Bound, took photos. Really nice. Humboldt defeats Ballard 14-13. I'm just looking at the stat you put next to it. Humboldt had 5 picks.
Ball hawk.
Dang. What in the world?
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's
5 picks and it's only 14-13. That's what I'm thinking, but
yeah. Did Lance Kuhn play? Do you have any idea? Did you see? I
don't know. I can't remember. I don't have the stat pulled up.
Humboldt has to go to Van Meter next week, which I think if Lance plays can make it really interesting. If not, good for Ballard. Good game, close game. Shout out Humboldt. Let's go to one of the best games I think I've ever seen. I didn't watch it, but this game, I don't have any words. Williamsburg defeats Cedar Rapids Xavier. That Cedar Rapids Xavier. 21-20, defending 4A state champion Cedar Rapids Xavier. They had 5 sacks. Kellen Cockrell threw for 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. Race Heitman had 15 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 fumble recovery. And Derek Wieskop had 12 tackles. Williamsburg was up 21-7. Xavier came all the way back and said, we're Cedar Rapids Xavier. We're just going to win this ball game and send these Raiders home crying. And they went for 2, and they didn't get it. Could have been caught. I'm just going to say, could have been caught. Maybe. I couldn't make that catch. But, Paul, I'm not being over dramatic when I say this might be the most impressive win I have ever seen in a regular season Iowa high school football game.
I'd put it right up there with the win of the season so far. I mean,
yeah,
for Williamsburg to beat Xavier is just huge for them.
And here's the thing. They've done it twice. They went to Van Meter last year and beat them. Like, oh my gosh. I hate that they didn't win a championship last year because Zach Lutmer went off, and Zach Lutmer's a dog. But Williamsburg is just, I don't think they get talked about enough. We didn't talk about them enough. We'll talk about that in my awards. But dude, I mean, I could not believe this game. And again, we'll talk about it. But Williamsburg, their district is nothing. Like, it's just not there this year. They're going to cruise through that. They play, I don't even know who they play next week. But, I mean, these guys in 3A, I mean, they're going to cruise. What really gets me is this was a 2A team last year. And I get it, 2A, 3A. But they just beat a 4A team, a defending state champion 4A team. You don't go to Xavier and beat Xavier in Xavier.
Yeah.
I'd like to look when the last time Xavier lost a home game.
That'd be a long
because
time.
I feel like it has been a long time. I got no words. I am speechless. This game left me speechless.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I had the Xavier score prepped for them winning. I had that all prepped up. Williamsburg, all of a sudden I'm looking, seeing they're up. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, Tyler was sending us text updates, and Tyler's like 21-7. I'm like, what? And they said 14-21. I'm like, all right. I was like, Xavier has calmed down. I'm going to get back into it, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if I agree going for 2, but it's a non-conference or it's a non-class game. It's not going to hurt you. I don't know, man. Like, I guess Xavier should still be the favorite, but tough. Just a wild game. In my mind, they're still a 2A school. So a 2A school went up and just kicked a 4A school. That's an impressive 2-year streak. Xavier and Van Meter. And guess what? Xavier has to go to Williamsburg next year. Now, Williamsburg will lose a bit, but they'll get their revenge, I guess.
To be fair, Williamsburg isn't a typical 2A. They got a 4-star on their roster.
No. But in the town, I mean, it's a nice town. They got a good Tanger outlet that I go shopping at sometimes. So.
Really?
Good for them. Let's move down to Class 3A. How about Sioux Center? Upsets Spirit Lake 30-20. Spirit Lake scared me in week 1 with Algona. I had a right to be scared because they just started slow again, it looks like. We don't have any stats for Sioux Center. I haven't put in stats. So we'll just touch on it briefly, but big win for Sioux Center, who lost week 1 to West Line, or they either beat West Line or lost to West Line. But Spirit Lake, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, shout out Gopher legend Co Kieft, because he liked our post on that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Almost at 37. We're almost at 37,000 on Instagram. We just clipped 14,000 on Twitter, so that's cool. Make sure to follow along. Join the fun. Webster City defeats Spencer 34-7. Jackson Cherry, man, no words. 30 carries, 321 yards, 5 touchdowns. The only thing I worry about Webster City, they're a great team. They get North Polk this week, and we'll really figure out what they are. If Jackson's off, they're off, it feels like. But Jackson ain't off, man. I mean, he is on.
He won't be off. He'll be there.
Yeah. That's
I'd be shocked if he has a bad game once a season.
Yeah. I'm curious to see the rest of the team. Webster City's been known as a defensive team. Really tough, gritty team. But we'll see what happens. I wanted to bring this one up. Technically, Clark is 2A, I believe. Clark defeats Knoxville 41-40 in a double overtime thriller. And I feel for my boys at Knoxville because, it's been a tough couple seasons. They are now 0-2 to start the year, and both their losses have come by 1 point and have been lost on 2-point conversions, whether that's been they've been scored against or they missed scoring on a 2-point conversion. So I feel for Knoxville. It's a tough start to the year. I hope things get better. But good for Clark. Good game, 41-40. Next one, Nevada defeats Roland Story 42-7. This Nevada team, man, might be the best one out of the last 3 years that they've been really good. This team can make noise in Class 3A, and it's all thanks to Case and Stevenson and that defense.
Yeah, that running ad was ridiculous.
I've never seen, was it 2 guys that he ran over?
Yeah, it was 2 guys and they got truck sticked. It was bad.
He's lucky he didn't get a unsportsmanlike conduct because he was already kind of pointing and taunting before he got to the end zone. But
do it.
Did
you gotta let him know.
The ref was probably so shocked by the hit. He's like, "You can do what you want." But if you haven't seen the clip, Quinn Douglas put it on his Twitter. IA Sports put it out on their thing. But the Veda, man, good defense. 3 turnovers forced. I don't have King's stats at quarterback, but I think he's just a solid option.
Yeah, it was like 113 yards, I think.
That's 2 dominant wins. So they've outscored opponents, 72-7 in 2 weeks. So they get Harlan in a couple weeks because Harlan's in their district. So could this be the year Nevada finally gets past Harlan? That's 2 years of losses to Harlan in the playoffs in the same exact round to get to the Dome. I think they're ready. This might be the year Nevada gets past them. Solon defeats Clear Creek 7-3. I just put this in here because 7-3, that's just football, baby. I mean, that's Iowa, South Dakota State. 2.8 yards per carry for Clear Creek Amana and 2.5 for Solon. That's about as good as it gets.
It's low.
I think Williamsburg plays Clear Creek Amana this week. I think that's what I said. I think Williamsburg plays Clear Creek Amana this week. I think.
For CCA.
Yeah. We'll see what happens.
I hammered the under on this game, so I'm happy.
Okay, nice. Good to see it. Yeah. I need to check BCM spreads more because I just don't check it. But I just find it so funny when it'll be a game like an 8-player game and I've seen spreads 62 points. I'm like, man, I was like, that's great. Cool. Class 2A, Underwood back on track. Big win over Kemper Catholic 24-14. You said DJ might maybe be hurt. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, he's usually dropping at least like 200 yards and a couple tutties and like 6 tackles, but He had like 3 tackles and 20 yards, or like 3 carries for 20 yards or something. So maybe he got hurt, not sure. Maybe Underwood just went crazy, but that's a massive win for Underwood coming off Van Meter.
Yeah, needed that game.
Yep.
In a perfect world, Underwood gets Van Meter again and has a chance to try again.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a championship game. That has a good feeling for it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just see what happens. Our 2A game of the week, Pella Christian defeats PCM 29-28 in double overtime. Benny Schure's 12 carries, 120 yards, and 3 touchdowns. You watched this game? There was a live stream of it.
Oh, I did not.
Okay. You were just quick to post it in about double overtime. The Pella Christian defense worries me just a tad, but that's a good win. Pella Christian, who lost a lot. I was talking to people like that do radio and stuff near that area, and they were like, man, we don't know what's going to happen, but we lost a lot. And now you're 2-0 with 2 very good wins.
Yeah, great start to the season for the Eagles. Electric win for their second game.
Yeah. Now it gets serious because Grundy Center is your next opponent, which is our game of the week, which will be out. That post will be out around when the time this comes out anyway. So I guess we can spoil that here. We'll talk about the other ones at the end, I guess. This was just crazy. Tipton is not a 2A school, but Vinton Shellsburg is. So I just put it in here. Tipton defeats Vinton Shellsburg 19-8. Tipton is 2-0, by the way. Tell your friends. The Tigers, Tipton, lost their quarterback on one play, and then they went to their backup. And the second quarterback both got injured with knee injuries on back-to-back plays on the same exact spot on the field. That is some Washington Commanders like luck with injury. I can't imagine. You put in your starter, gets injured, you're like, okay. And then your backup goes out. Imagine being the third string on the bench. Like, Buddy probably was like, all right, I guess I better get ready. And all of a sudden he's like, oh, that's wild.
Yeah. That is ridiculous.
That's about as bad as luck as you can get. But good for Tipton. A win's a win. Good for them. The last one I threw on, throw a score on there. I think it was 25-0. Albia defeats. I saw you highlighting it. I was
just highlighting.
Albia defeats I-35. I think it was 25-0. I just wanted to touch on Albia. These boys are 2-0. 2 pretty good wins over Centerville and I-35. Luke Wynn, 12 for 16, 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. Just wanted to touch on Albia. A couple of people were talking about him. 2 good wins to start the year. I'm curious to see how they'll go the rest of the year, but good for them for the most part. So, All right. We're on to Class 1A. Denver defeats Wapsie Valley 39-18. I enjoyed this game. These guys play every single year. Micah Greer, 15 carries, 208 yards, and 3 touchdowns. This was a game between 2 unbeatens. Denver, they haven't been a dome-bound team the last couple of years, but they're a pretty good squad.
Yeah. Big win. Micah Greer, man. 208. 3 tutties, just like you said. That's crazy. What's that yards per carry? That's like 208 divided by 15.
Yeah, that's a good chunk. Pleasantville. Keep an eye on these guys. Caleb Cook is their running back. Goes off again. I don't have his stats. But Woodward Ranger, they defeat Woodward Ranger 28-14. That's a Woodward team that only lost to Madrid by 1 point. Pleasantville's got a couple guys this year. They set themselves up nicely. I know they have a bigger game this week. It was almost one of our games of the week. No, I was just very impressed with Pleasantville. I think that's a big win. This one was pretty cool. I don't know if it's the first time. I don't know how long it's been, but until Bound, you know how we do our we have the final, that past matchups. East Sac County, for the first time since Bound matchups have been a thing, which they've played OAB-CIG almost every single year since 2008, 7 or 6. East Sac County defeated OAB-CIG 13-12 for their first win against the Falcons in forever. And Luke Wernemont had 16.5 tackles and 4 tackles for loss. we're starting to see that. I feel like winning streaks against other schools just aren't as big anymore. We saw Mount Vernon beat that streak against Solon. That's got to feel good, man. I mean, just finally, you can say, finally, we beat these guys.
Yeah. It's a great feeling. Finally, OABCIG doesn't have a DeJean. Just dropped 200 yards and 10 touchdowns. So
that's a tough one. Tough pill to swallow. But that's a good win for East Sac County. The next one, the Dike New Hartford Wolverines might need to find some offense, but I guess they're 1-0 or 1-1. It doesn't matter. They defeat West Branch 9-7. If you're keeping track at home, technically they've given up only 14 points all year. But guess what? They've only scored, let's do math, 15 points all year.
Who's
probably the weirdest stat of the year.
Who's their DC? Get him up in the college ball. You're done.
Isn't that – that's just like, okay, 1 week, yeah, I get it. But 2 weeks, what? Like 14 points total. Yeah, as a defense, I'm like, man, we are good. But as an offense, we're like, man, we got to score some points. I mean, that's an Iowa Hawkeye stat.
For defense.
Yeah, that's I don't know what to think of Dike New Hartford yet, but if they could put some points on the board, that defense. Yeah, that's a good one.
Just keep it close. No
yeah.
What.
Yeah. Grundy Center gets back on track. Meaning they scored points. 31-7 over Applington Parkersburg. That's a pretty good Falcons team. Colin Gordon had a decent day. Justin Kanak wasn't their top runner from what I remember. So good win for the Spartans, back on track. They get Pella Christian this week, which is our game of the week. I'll be interested to see Pella Christian's defense in that game, but we'll see what happens. Okay, let's jump to Class A. We don't have many results from this. Yeah. And literally 2 of the games I picked, they look close, so I was like, all right. The big one, Paul, Logan Magnolia took Kingsley Pearson to the woodshed, 42-12. Calvin Collin runs for 27 carries, 159 yards, and 3 touchdowns. What in the world happened? I mean, just crazy.
I fell for it again. Every time I pick the team with the stud, it always goes wrong.
We had somebody at this game. Caden Van Bosch was our bound photographer at this game. I need to text him and be like, what happened? It was so funny because halfway through I realized these 2 teams have the same exact logo. It's just different colors. So that's funny. But again, we'll talk about motivation for this game in a little bit. But good for Logan Magnolia, man. That's a big jump up for them. And Kingsley Pearson, I mean, first loss as a team in Class A. And maybe that's another thing. And maybe, I guess I didn't think about that. Their second ever game in Class A, it's more. You play more or a little. I don't know. It's different. But just kind of one of those things to think about. I'm just going to quickly toss through these because they were close. IKM Manning defeats Panorama 27-26. From what I remember, IKM Manning, I think, rallied in this game and won. And then Nashua Plainfield defeats North Tama 22-20. It was a very quiet week in terms of like big games in Class A. So yeah, just quickly, I know we spent 2 minutes on it, but some weeks we spend more. That's our Class A recap. We'll jump to 8-player where it's just spicy. I mean, 8-player is so good this year. Central City takes home the Tractor Bowl, 44-21 over Springville. Aiden Klosterman showed up, 14 carries, 161 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also caught 2 touchdowns and 88 yards. I feel like Central City might not lose a game again after that loss to Buffington and Winfield Mountain Union.
Yeah, Central City's legit, man. It's so funny going from these normal, like, not normal classes, you know what I'm saying, bigger classes, then you get to 8-player and you just see, like, 71-20 coming up. And just rattles me. I'm like, what? What's going on for a second? Then realize it's 8-player.
This one just, I don't know, man. I don't know what I was looking at. I don't know what I was seeing. St. Edmund takes down Collins Maxwell 61-14. No stats for this one that we have, but I guess, experience. I think Collins Maxwell is a younger team, but St. Edmund, man, beat Bishop Garrigan week 1. These boys are good.
Yeah. Another team, throw it in the mix.
I tell you, there's 8 teams, 8, 9, 10 teams. Speaking of one that got back on track, that beat a team that I thought was going to be one of the top, probably the game of the week. Moravia defeats Montezuma 57-55, and listen to these stat lines. Shane Helmick went 8 for 11, 125 yards and 4 touchdowns, and he ran for 119 yards and 3 touchdowns, so 7 total touchdowns. And then Brady Bolton, who I told you about last week, who's just a sophomore, threw for 338 yards and 8 touchdowns. So he scored every point.
8 is just ridiculous.
Dude, like Moravia, we'll talk about the team they lost to in week 1 that maybe we need to be paying attention to. But this is a classic 8-player game. I mean, this is exactly what we thought was going to happen. I think I'd love to go back on our prediction video because I think you said this was a game that I think it was this one that you were like, the score is going to be in like the 60s or something like that. Yeah. And like, I think that was the game. And I was like, yeah, he's probably right. But dude, what a game.
Yeah. I think I said like the line for this one on the point total will be like 120.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Insane,
didn't quite get there.
I just, I think Moravia they can lose again, but I don't think they want to, clearly. It's just a tough spot for Montezuma. And they're young. I mean, they're going to figure it out. Brady's only sophomore and he's throwing for 8 touchdowns. Like, are you kidding me? It's wild. Great game. Good for Moravia getting back on track. This is a team that I don't think anyone's talking about. Well, I lied. Now they're going to start talking about them. The Bedford Bulldogs blew out Moravia on week 1. I think 63-20, something like that. And we're like, that's not normal. Like, Moravia is a team, like, you literally just saw the numbers. Shane Helmick, like, unbelievable. They score like 60 points a game. And Bedford comes in and just blows the doors off them. And we're like, oh, okay, we get it. I mean, that's fine. Murray's not as good as Moravia, but Bedford beats Murray 71-20. And Connor Nally throws for 161 yards, or runs for 161 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's also the quarterback. Didn't have his greatest running stat or throwing stats, but maybe Bedford needs to be a team we're talking about. Could be the Waco of last year.
We're just throwing in teams to this pool of 8, man. Playoffs is going to be crazy for 8, man.
And our next game, we'll jump right to it. Key defeats Turkey Valley 68-56. No defense in this one. Dalton Mutterman, 275 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns, 85 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns. These two teams, like, I know they are Turkey lost, but they're still going to be good. Like, it is so unbelievable how good 8-player is this year. There is no favorite. I mean, maybe Winfield Mount Union, maybe Gladwick Rhinebeck, but like, there's going to be teams that are really good that get kicked out in the round of 16 because, like, there's just so many good teams, it feels like.
Yeah. Deepest class, like, competitive-wise, probably competition-wise, yeah.
And I think that's so good for that class because it sucks. 8-player gets, just dogged on so much. Like, they go to the state tournament and everyone's like, why are you posting about them? And why are they even on our stat page? They should have a separate stat page. While I don't disagree that they should have a separate stat page,
I'd agree with
it's
that.
It's still football. Like, these guys play more than anyone else because it's them. Like, the quarterback is usually the leading tackler on defense because he's a linebacker and stuff. Like, these guys at the end of the night, when you see pictures of them, like with their family or their girlfriends or their friends or whatever afterwards, these boys are dead. I mean, they look dead for good reason because they're running nonstop. And it's just, we don't appreciate 8-man football enough. And I think we need to start. I've always loved it, but people don't appreciate 8-man enough. You have to respect it because, unfortunately, we're going to see more 8-player teams go. I mean, it's unfortunate, but more and more schools will become 8-player schools because everybody's moving to the big schools. So you better love 8-player because this is what we got. I don't think we'll ever get 6-player, but 8-player is special, and I think we need to cherish it. And this year is just so good. Like some of the best football is being played at 8-player. So go to your local 8-player game on a Friday night and go out and support. Yeah, so that's cool. We're going to jump on to our Friday night standout, where Paul and I go and look at or give our shout out to one stat line giver. My stat line is going to go to a player from Sydney, not Sydney, Australia, for the Sydney Cowboys, I believe is his mascot name. I'm giving it to Michael Hensley, who had 367 all-purpose yards. He had 24 carries for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he caught the ball 3 times for 2 touchdowns and 182 yards. The man literally had a Randy Moss stat line in the receiving category and in the rushing category. Michael, what a game. Congratulations. Dude just didn't stop running.
Yeah, crazy. 367 all purpose. Mine is Casey Kelly from Prairie, 440 yards, 6 touchdowns on 16 attempts. That's just ridiculous. Broke the school record for most touchdowns in a game. And he did it in 5A. So it's ridiculous. Congrats to Casey Kelly.
Yeah.
That's my Friday night standout.
Sweet. It's time to overreact. It was a little harder to choose mine this week. I don't know. There's always something to overreact about. I'm going to overreact about Class 4A and how Class 4A is an absolute just dog fight right now, and I can't pick a favorite. There's just something in just, I don't know, man. I think Xavier losing is big, and it just opens up the floodgates. I'm curious about ADM. The ADM defense worries me just a tad, and for good reason. The offense is there, but if one of those two between Flora and oh my gosh, what's the other kid's name? Brevin Dahl. You just never know. And then we got Glenwood coming out of nowhere. We got Norwalk. We got Creston. We got all these teams just like working up the pole. I'm going to overreact and say there is no favorite in Class 4A anymore. I just feel like we're just not there yet. And maybe that'll straighten it out as the weeks go on. Western Dubuque, like they might not be 4A. I don't know. I can't remember. But man, I can't. North Scott, I'm going through all these teams. There are just so many teams in 4A, and I guess you could say the same for 8-player. But for 4A, you just expect it. You're like, okay, we know who's going to be good. But then when the top dog goes down and a team that is respected and everyone's like, they're going to the Dome, doesn't matter. When the top dog goes down to a 3A team, and, Harlan did this to Lewis Central, I get it. But, like, I don't know, man. It's not, it's a weird week when Xavier and Lewis Central lost in the same week. That's a stat. When was the last time Xavier and Lewis Central lost in the same week in the regular season? Like, dude, I'm going to overreact. Class 4A is impossible to predict.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's crazy this year. Mine, I'm sticking with 5A. Sorry for the lower classes. But Kennedy, I've hyped this team up all offseason and at the beginning. I'm at this point a little worried about them. PVI is not expecting them to lose too. So they look good against Dowling for people's standards. I don't know if it was like a sleeper or they kind of got caught lacking. The thing is, June Forte and Cyrus Courtney have been on a tear.
Yes.
Cyrus Courtney has like 490 yards to start the season. Being a 1,000-yard receiver in Iowa was like really hard to do, and he's already halfway there, and it's week 2 or week 3 now. So I'm not like terrified for them. Defense, I guess, is their kind of problem right now. Letting 36 get dropped on you pretty tough against PV, who lost like same amount of their offensive production from last year. And I mean, Dowling kind of worked him, and Valley shut down Dowling pretty well this week. So Kenny, I'm a little worried. That's my overreaction, and it maybe honestly might not be that big of an overreaction right now.
I agree, because I saw the loss to PV and I'm like, what? Like, you were top 4 in everyone's polls. Like, the season started and everyone's like, Dowling, Valley, Johnston, Cedar Rapids, Kennedy. Like, you were above Cedar Falls in a lot of polls. You had the offense. You had an offensive lineman that is huge and is one of the best in the country. Like, you're there. And then, okay, we'll let the Dowling loss slide. It's Dowling. But the Prairie or the Pleasant Valley loss, you're just like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. It was I don't think it's it's an overreaction. But I don't think it's a major.
They got a lot of time left, and they play Cedar
Yes.
Falls.
Yes. Plenty of time. Will they make the playoffs? Yes. But there is reason for concern over at Cedar Rapids Kennedy. And they know it. And like you said, their stats are unbelievable. Like, you're like, how are they losing? Like, it's going to get there. They're going to hit it. We're all going to look stupid. You know, so what? You lost the first 2 weeks. I keep going back to last year's Valley team that was terrible to start the year. And what did they do? They go all the way to the state championship game at 5-4. You're like, what?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Okay, we're on to Bound to Talk awards. My award, I've been waiting to talk about it, man. I've been waiting. I'm gonna give my bulletin board material award. This is what this podcast, by the way, this episode is gonna be called Bulletin Board Material because we gave unbelievable bulletin board material to 3 teams this week: Williamsburg, Logan Magnolia, and Waukee Northwest. If you guys don't know the background, if you're not following us on social media, on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, we post our staff picks. 8 of us on our staff. We all pick the games, our games of the week. So we have 7 picks, 8 games, or 8 people, 7 games. For Waukee Northwest, Waukee, we all picked Waukee except Matt. Matt picked Waukee Northwest because he was a homer and he graduated from Waukee Northwest. I'm not counting that because deep down, I think I heard him say Waukee was going to win. We picked Waukee. What happens? Waukee Northwest wins. And then I didn't hear much from Northwest people. Blah blah blah. And then I guess we'll go Logan Magnolia because it wasn't as big, but we all picked Kingsley Pearson because we're not crazy. We saw Bo Goodwin and we're like, all right, Bo Goodwin, he's going to show up. Logan Magnolia, good team, but Kingsley Pearson will win fine. And what does Logan Magnolia do? They go and blow the doors off Kingsley Pearson. We get a picture from Logan Magnolia's starting running back who takes a picture next to the scoreboard and puts it on his Instagram story, and he just tags us. I'm like, okay, buddy. The big one that just got me was Williamsburg and Xavier. We all picked Cedar Rapids Xavier. And I can tell you right now, you and I, Paul, I'm sure, and you said you teetered with it. I teetered with Williamsburg. I did. But you and I, in our prediction show that didn't release, you and I both talked about, we just thought experience, man. Like, it's Xavier. It's Xavier. It's Xavier. Well, we know what happens. Williamsburg goes out and wins. And we figure out. So when the coach was leaving the field, my younger brother, Tyler, he was at the game taking photos for us. The Williamsburg head coach stops Tyler because Tyler's wearing a Bound shirt. And he says, "We appreciate the motivation." And Tyler's like, "What?" And the coach just walks off. And then I see a video this week or on Saturday, and it's of Williamsburg players getting ready in the locker room. And there's nothing written on the whiteboard except one thing in the top right-hand corner. And the camera zooms in, and it says IA_bound, or it says @IA_bound, and then says equals, and it's a clown face. And I love, is it fun to be wrong? No. But it is really funny when we become that bulletin board material for schools that say, well, they didn't pick us. Like, I'm not saying Williamsburg beat Xavier because we didn't pick them, but we sure did give them some motivation. And we just amplify that. And I sent that in our Bound Slack chat. I'm like, guys, we have so much, like, people watch our stuff and they look at our stuff and they care about our stuff. I just thought that was really cool. Those 3 teams are my bulletin board material awards because we didn't pick them. They weren't favored, but what they did is they went out and won the games that mattered, whether that be it was us, whether that be it was anyone else. I knew we had some of a impact when last year I picked my alumni Grinnell to lose a game. So they literally printed off the post, hung it in the locker room, and then went out and beat the team. And I got a text from the head coach that says, "Hey, thanks." I was like, "What?" So, it's just cool.
Gotta love being wrong.
Paul, what do you got?
I got the Cherry Bomb Award because Jackson Cherry just went nuclear, drops 321 yards and 5 tutties. Bro went nuts, and I'm waiting for this one offers to roll in.
Is he hitting 2,500?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is he hitting 3,000?
No. Big ask.
You never know. He's unbelievable, man. I want to watch him. I haven't seen film of him. I want to go out and watch him. I think his
junior film was disgusting.
Is he like a Reggie Bush type? What kind of build is he?
He's big.
Truck
stick.
Titus Cram ran all over my Grinnell Tigers this week. I think he ran for almost 300 yards. So that was fun. But Bondurant got back on track, by the way.
Bach was at that game, I think.
Yeah, he was because of Titus. But Titus had like a wild touchdown run. There's a lot of dudes in the state, man. You could go to your local high school football game. There's a dude. I mean, there's prospects all across the state. It's a good time to be a Hawkeye and Iowa State fan in the state because, fortunately, a lot of those are going there. A lot of these players are going there. And then, I mean, I hate to say it, because these guys are so good, if they don't go to Iowa or Iowa State, we can't be too upset because they deserve the big prospects. We saw that with Caden Proctor. He is an Alabama guy, and he started at left tackle this week for Alabama, which was just so cool to see. It's just really weird because, like, when Cooper DeJean is making plays, I'm like, I remember that kid in OABCIG basketball, and he was like this tall, and he wasn't that big. And then Wonkba has a pick, and then Brody Breck is playing football for or not Brody Breck. Who am I thinking for? JJ Cole is playing at Iowa State, all this other stuff, and you're like, Abu Sama looks like everybody's like, Abu Sama is amazing, and I'm thinking, I'm like, dude, we knew this. Like, Abu Sama's a dog. We knew this. It was just a matter of time, and now everybody's starting to see it, and it's just really cool to see that impact. There's just something special about that. It makes me feel a little old, but
I was talking about before this show. We can make a post every week about some alumni.
Yeah, we could. It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. They're just getting better. I mean, athletes are getting better in general, but the prospects in the state of Iowa are just beyond anything we've seen in a long time. It's just really cool. Really cool indeed. So that's it for our recap. It is 1:17 in the morning. This will be out at 8 tomorrow. So I'll edit this up quickly. I'll get things posted up, and we'll be ready to go. We appreciate everyone for watching. We might be back midweek, might not. We might just go to our preview show on Friday. We'll see what happens. Might try to get in somebody on a possible guest, but we will still ask to have people submit questions, so we'll get those in, and we'll be ready to go. Quickly, let me run through our class 3A or our class games of the week just quickly. We're not going to talk about them, but Paul decided he does 5A. I do the rest. Southeast Polk versus Prairie is our class 5A game of the week. North Scott versus Assumption is our class 4A game of the week. 3A Webster City North Polk. 2A Trainer and Clarinda, 2-2-0 teams. Keep an eye on those boys. Grundy Center at Pella Christian for 1A. Mount Air versus Madrid in Class A. Keep an eye on those two. And Bedford Lennox is our Class 8 player game of the week. Lennox, another team, man. We ain't talking about them, but man, they're good. We'll see how good Bedford is against those. So not known teams. I like throwing in teams that we don't hear about as much into our games of the week. So
reminder that we try to switch teams up quite a bit.
Yeah, we try to as
not
much
always
as we
just
can.
The game of the week.
Yeah. Pella Christian, obviously back-to-back weeks, but yeah, just got to try to do it. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, thank you so much for watching Bound to Talk Football. We appreciate it. He's Paul Arridge. I'm Blake Walker. Have a good night. Have a good morning. Wherever you're watching.
Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you.